Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina and this is Lifting Pins and Needles, a channel all about sewing. Today I want to do a really fun video where I'm going to answer a lot of questions. There is a sewing tag that has been going around recently with the sewing vloggers and it's called So Many Questions. This tag was generated in a Facebook group that provides support for sewing vloggers, so people that have sewing channels or want to start one. And the idea came from JJ from the Camden Stitch and Laura from the Specky seamstress. And many of us in the group also contributed with some questions. I did contribute with 2 questions, but I don't really remember what they were. Anyway, there are lots of questions there. I don't have to answer them all. The guideline was to choose like 10. I've chosen a bit more than 10, but my answers are very short, I promise, and you won't be stuck here for a long time. I am filming at night, it's winter, I'm wearing my blue Blackwood cardigan. I've got a hot water bottle on my lap because it's freezing. It is freezing. I've got an apple and cinnamon hot drink there. I don't drink tea, these are just like flavored stuff. And let's get cracking. I'm going to start this with 2 truths and a lie. So I'm just going to tell you these 3 facts and tell me in the comments below what you think is true, what you think is a lie, and let's just have fun with it. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that I swam from one island to another with about 500 people in a big swimming event in New Zealand. And while we were swimming from one island to the next, there was a pod of orca that swam through us. About 3 or 4 orcas. None of the swimmers were hurt. None of the people swimming even knew about it. Only the volunteers on the kayaks. And I was there in the mist, you know, swimming in the ocean with just a few killer whales. That's totally true. The other one. When I was little, I must have been about 8 or 9, I got lost in the Royal Botanical Gardens in Sydney. I walked around for hours. I didn't even know I was lost. I was having a blast looking at all the flowers, the birds. I managed to find my way back to the car somehow, because I'm talking about this, you know, the CBD of Sydney. I got back to the car. When I got to the car, there was no one there, but I stayed there. I thought, you know, might as well just stay. And a few minutes later, my parents got there and they were crying and it was just terrible. And I'm like, wow, what happened? Oh, I didn't even know I was lost. And it's not the only time I've ever gotten lost when I was a child. It happened many times. The third one, in New Zealand, in Auckland, there is a tower called the Sky Tower. And one of the attractions is that you can pay and they take you up to the very top of the tower and you jump. And it's called the Sky Jump. And if you're walking around the city center, you can go there and watch people be lowered onto a platform and everyone's screaming. And so one day I thought, you know what? I'm gonna pay the $150 and I'm just gonna jump down the tower. Best day ever, best day ever. Okay, let's carry on with all the questions. How and when did you start sewing? I started sewing way back when in 1990. No Google, no internet, nothing. I actually didn't even learn using sewing books. I learned purely by instinct. 1990, I was 11 years old. I had just arrived to live in the States. We lived in Michigan, really close to the border of Illinois and Indiana, very close to Lake Michigan. I spent winters and summers going to Lake Michigan to swim and to walk on it while it was frozen. My dad was doing a PhD at the time, and in the apartment complex where we lived, there was a sewing machine you could like take home to loan, like for loan. And my mom once got it to do like some random thing. My mom has always had a sewing machine. I grew up watching her like make cushions or like pillow covers and square things. She never actually made like proper clothes, you know? So I was curious and I had a teddy bear that had like a woven jacket. I took it off the teddy bear. I traced the shape of the sleeves, everything onto a scrap, and I made the teddy bear another jacket, and it was the same as the one that the bear already had. And I thought, you know, I could make myself stuff. At the time I was growing like weeds. I was like, my growth spurt was ridiculous at that age. and I didn't have enough clothes. You know, we were in limited funding with my dad's scholarship, and I went to a school with no uniform, and I was basically even wearing my mom's clothes to have enough. So that is why and when. Back in 1990, when and why? Because I didn't have enough clothes, and I was sort of drawn to sewing. I think it was something like, I don't know, I was just drawn to it and I just started doing it. How much time do you spend sewing? I would say not in the physical act of sewing, but it's pretty much on my mind 24/7. I dream about sewing. I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming about stuff I'm sewing or that I want to sew, or thinking up ways to sew things that I want to make. And I've actually had inspiration during my dreams, and I wake up and I'm like, oh, and I like scribble it onto a piece of paper. And much like a musician sometimes has inspiration when they're like sleeping and then they wake up and they jot some notes down to not forget the melody. Well, it's the same way with my sewing. And it hasn't always been like that. There are phases in my life where sewing has taken a back step. When my son was born, I didn't sew for a whole year. I couldn't. I was a zombie, and I admire anyone who has a newborn and is making them clothes, because I could barely function. He was awake every single hour out of every single night, and I was like a zombie. Like, if I would have tried to sew, I would have made huge mistakes. So sewing was out. Same as when I've been working really intensively. There have been periods of my life where I've worked full-time nights. Oh man, in that time, if I made 1 or 2 things a month, I was grateful, and I was always yearning for the time to sew. But since I've been a stay-at-home mom, since we left New Zealand and I've lived in Bolivia, here in Brazil, I'm pretty much thinking about sewing constantly. And having the YouTube channel always keeps me motivated to think of new things to make. And in summary, I'm a full-time person that sews. I don't make a living out of it other than what YouTube AdSense pays and some affiliate links, but it's something I enjoy, and I pretty much do it full-time. Who supports your sewing at home? Everyone supports my sewing, and it's been that way ever since I was a child. My mom was my biggest supporter when I was really little, and I begged my dad for my own sewing machine because we had that sewing machine on loan that I told you about. But I had to return it, and then I was like, oh no, it's gone, you know. So back then my parents invested in a really good Singer sewing machine, like the older type, super heavy, made out of metal, like really good sewing machine. It's still there, like it's at my mother-in-law's house right now, and it works. And in the summer I was able to have it fine-tuned, and I was able to do some hems, and I didn't get to sew that much this summer because my husband got sick. I've had it, it's 29 years old, and it's perfect. So my mom was the first one that thought I could actually do this. I made her clothes when I was growing up. Like, I made her like really cool stuff. When I was 14, 15, I was making 2-piece suits with blazers and, you know, like fully lined and welt pockets and the work. And my dad too, I mean, he bought everything I needed. He made sure I had fabric and like all the supplies, and if the machine broke down, he would run and get it fixed. And it's still like that now. My mom's machine and my old overlocker are at my parents'. And every time I get there for the summer vacation, he makes sure it's all working, that everything's good, you know. In my little nuclear family, my son, I mean, he supports my channel, he takes pictures, he's always giving me company, giving me feedback about how the makes look. He's really good at giving me feedback on where the hems should be. If something looks odd, he's got a good visual, like aesthetically, for being a kid, like for being a boy. A pretty rough boy, you know, he's out there with his, you know, friends playing ball and all that. But my husband, he knows how important it is for me. He's always worried do you want to go out and buy more fabric? You know, he gave me a huge shopping spree for my birthday, like go and get a bunch of fabric. So I'm really blessed that way. What is your dream job? Oh my gosh, I've had my dream job and I mourn it till this day. You might know that I'm a midwife. I've been a midwife for, I don't know, I left university 2000. I've been a midwife since 2001 and very active. I've worked in many areas of midwifery, like in a whole scope. It's been really fun. I've done community work, birth control, postnatal wards, labor and birthing suite, high dependency unit, NICU, neonatal intensive care unit. That is part of the scope of practice for the Chilean midwife. So I worked many years there, and that's actually the area where I work when I go to Chile in the summers. So I mean, I've had my dream job, I've lost my dream job when I went to Bolivia, and here in Brazil I'm not able to work, and I only work in the summer. It keeps me active, and I don't want to like let go of my profession because I love it. It's a huge part of me, and it was a great effort to go to university and then do a master's degree, and you know, I don't just want to let it go, you know. But what is my other dream job I would love to have, and I've been dreaming about this since 2012 maybe, when I started going to the gym and training for triathlon. In another life, I would love to have a degree in sports science and be some sort of coach. Long distance training. I've done an Ironman triathlon. I've done lots of marathons, open water swimming. Anyway, now that's not related to sewing at all, but I really do like that. So there you go. That's my worst sewing habit. I would have to confess is that I use my mouth as a pin cushion while I'm sewing. I just want to get the seams sewn, and I do use pins. I cannot sew without pins. I just can't, you know, I use a lot of pins. And as I'm sewing, I'm just popping them in my mouth, or I'm just flicking them and they're just falling on the table where I'm sewing. So as soon as I finish the seam, like my table is littered in pins, or I'm like just getting like 100 pins out of my mouth and putting them in the pin cushion. Bad habit, don't do it, it's dangerous. I haven't swallowed one yet though. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Chile. I was born in Chile. Both my parents are from Chile. My husband's from there. You know, Chile is a country in South America. If you look on the map, it's very long and very thin. Its length is huge, and that's why when you live there and you stay in some area, you barely ever get to see your whole country because it's just so long, you know. I haven't been to like the south of Chile, and I would love to. I've just never been there. That's where I'm from, but it's not usually where I live, unfortunately. I've been moving around my whole life. Just to name the countries I've lived in, I started off living in Chile where I was born, then I lived in Australia, then I lived in the States, then I lived in Chile again, then I moved to New Zealand, then I moved to Bolivia, now I live in Brazil. So there you go. Where do you sew? I'm super fortunate to have a sewing room. It's the first time ever I've had a sewing room since we've moved into this house in Brazil. Prior to that, decades and decades of sewing on the dining room table, on the kitchen table, on a counter. In Bolivia, I sewed in the laundry room next to the washing machine. So, you know, it's been a challenge. My family have always been understanding. When I was younger and lived back at home, the dining room was a mess. I mean, there was always fabric and strands of everything and pins and a mess. I would usually clean it up by Friday evening to have the weekend like with a clean table. But usually all the junk would be back on there like Sunday. So just before starting my YouTube channel, I cleared out a bench that I had junk on in the laundry room in Bolivia. And that is where I had my own space. It was tiny. It was a bench where both of my machines could fit. I had a drawer full of stuff and I made do. And you probably saw that area because I did show it to you, one of the first ever videos on this channel. And I cringe back to this day about those videos, but oh well. Since I've moved into this house, we have a spare bedroom upstairs and I've got it set up. I've got two tables, a big one for cutting, another table for sewing. The whole cupboard is full of my sewing stuff, my stash. The drawers are full of zippers and buttons, and I've never had so much space to have everything, you know, like really organized, and that is amazing. I am, you know, enjoying it while it lasts. If we move into a smaller house, I might not have this anymore. I know I'm not always going to have a room as such, but for now I'm just so happy to have it. This house is huge. There are rooms here that I don't even know what they're for. I even have a room for filming now. This tiny little room is like a guest room, but we never have guests, and we don't even have a bed in here. There's just nothing. So lights are here, the camera, this rug, and that's where you see me filming now. What sewing machine do you use? I purchased the Janome 2030 Q, I don't even know the name, QDC. And it's the first type of sewing machine I have that's like electronic, that has like that automatic buttonhole maker and like threader and a whole bunch of gadgets. It's not a top of the line Janome, but it's like a mid-range, better than what I've ever had before. The ones I've had before have been a load of rubbish. I mean, with the exception of the original Singer, that one was amazing. But then I had this, what was I had in New Zealand, this Brother that was so basic and plastic, and it was terrible. And in Bolivia, I had this Toyota that was like a toy sewing machine. I don't know how I got stuff sewn on that thing. The motor was so weak. I couldn't even sew like a normal seam on a normal fabric. It was pretty challenging. And I started my channel sewing on that thing. I was glad to let that go. And there might be better Toyota sewing machines, but the one I had was very bad. This one is awesome. It's changed my life. It came with a bunch of feet I didn't even know I can't live without anymore. And it's got a lot of things I don't use, but the things that it does have, like the buttonholes, I mean, that is amazing. All my prior sewing life, I've been using that 3-step buttonhole thingy where you had to like, and then your buttons never came out the same size, and it was just hilarious. I don't even know how I made so many buttonholes. So I use that one. I also have an older model Janome. I think it's 1080, I believe. I'm not sure. I got that one used, but in new condition here. And I use that one for top stitching and for like home decor things, curtains and all that sort of thing. So that's my other one that's also on my sewing table. So, you know, if I'm top stitching, I can just whiz from one to the other, and it's super practical. It's the first time ever I've had 2 sewing machines, and I feel safe. Like if anything happens to my main Janome, I know I have the other one and I can keep sewing. So that is awesome. I have a serger, and I've had the same one 3 times. Like literally, I moved to a country and I look for the same one, and I just want to buy the same one because I know how it works. The first one I got in 1998 and it's like a generic Chinese semi-industrial sewing machine. They're always green. They don't have a brand. They sell them everywhere here, pretty cheap, I would say, and they work a charm. They will sew through anything. They will never become unthreaded. If I have to swap the colors, I can do it in 1 minute. It's just a 3-thread, so I can't really sew garments with it. It just finishes seams. So if I'm sewing with knits, I have to sew on my sewing machine and then go and finish the seams, but I don't mind. I really like my serger. It's loud, it vibrates, it moves all over the show, but this is the 3rd one I've had. And I still have my original one at my mom's house. In Bolivia, I had the same one, sold it, got here, bought the same one. And if I go anywhere else, I think I'm gonna get the same one. What inspires you in your sewing? Basically people I see on the street sometimes. I've been known to take pictures of people on the street without them knowing. Things I see in movies, everywhere basically. Anything that goes through my eyes, I relate to sewing. And you know, I'm always on Pinterest, Instagram, other people, and I'm always thinking, how can this style be adapted to what I like? Because I have really fixed ideas. I'm trying to step out of them a bit, but I have really fixed ideas about what I like. And so anything that I see, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna like make it exactly. I don't want to copy. I want to be unique. I want to be original. So there might be some things I like on certain styles, but I want to adapt it to what I really like. So inspiration comes from everywhere. Woven or knits, I would have to say 100% woven. New patterns that come out that are made out of knit, I'm like, yeah. I just find knit sewing necessary sometimes if you want to take a break and want like a quick satisfying fix. I do enjoy a knit project, but the ones that really motivate me are the woven ones, and especially in like chiffons and georgettes and those thin like silk, you know, that type of fabric is what really gets me, because of how it looks and how you feel wearing it. And I'm used to sewing with that fabric now. It's sort of normal for me, like the feel, the handle. It's not as like difficult as when I started using it, you know, when I was way younger. So 100% woven. If a pattern comes out for woven, I'm like all over it, trying to see if it's something I want to make, you know, woven all the way. Who do you sew for? Well, mainly myself, as you would tell. And it's not being selfish or anything, it's just the hobby I like to do. And then the other important person I sew for as much as I can, when I can, and I can see her and fit her and everything, is my mum. And then over the last couple of years, I've made things for my mother-in-law as well. She has similar measurements to mine, so if she tries on a dress that I've made and it fits her, it's really easy for me to sew for her because I don't have to make many adjustments. And I have made her a few things. I don't have any pictures of her wearing the things I've made. I might source those. Last one I made her was this awesome black lace dress when she came to see us in Bolivia once. I think that was the last time I made her something. And my husband, I've made him jeans, I made him a pair of dress pants. He is very difficult to sew for. Oh my gosh, he is very difficult. So he might miss out on all the goodness really, because yeah, he's a difficult customer. Very difficult. My son, on the other hand, he is the best. He lets me fit him. You know, he has a clear idea of what he wants and how he likes his things, not like my husband. And I've made him pants, jackets, t-shirts, shorts, like whatever. I've made my son, and I really like sewing for him. I'm planning another big sew for him in a few more months, because he can still fit into the things I made him last year. So yeah, I'm planning a big stuff for him too. And just like 2 years ago, I started sewing for my nieces, and it's so fun. I mean, I don't have a girl. I think it was one of my frustrated dreams, I suppose, as a seamstress. I always dreamed of having a girl and making her the most amazing things. But I got a boy, and although I still sew for him, it's not the cute stuff, because you don't put frills and ruffles on boys' clothes, you know. So I have my nieces, and soon you're gonna see some things I've made for them. I've made some really cute stuff within the last week, and they've been taken to them in Chile by someone. And as soon as I have some pictures of them in the things, I will show you them. They're super cute. Printed or PDF. Now, I live in a place that's far away. I don't have access to any printed patterns whatsoever. So I love PDFs because you can purchase them, download them, print them, assemble them, and cut your things instantly. And as a person with not much patience, you know, in life, I am all for PDFs. Thank you very much. Best tip you have learned on YouTube. I would have to say, hands down, how to make continuous bias tape from a rectangle or a square. There are about 1,000 videos that show how to do this. And I don't know where I was living that I was making single strips and then uniting them one by one by one. Oh my gosh. I mean, that is fine. If you want to make a small amount of bias tape for, like, say, just a neckline, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But if I'm looking to make yards and yards of it for something, that is not the way to go. So when I learned that was life-changing. The other thing I've learned, and not from YouTube, but from a sewing friend, Vivian, totally life-changing as well. She was making some bias tape out of like chiffon or georgette, I think, and she was dreading it. I'm like, how are you gonna try that? Because I tried to do that and put it through my bias tape maker, and it just, the fabric wouldn't press. It wouldn't like make the crease lines, and I'd pass it through, put the iron on it, and the thing would just like flop open, and it wouldn't work. She said, oh, just spray some starch on it. Why I never thought of that. Now I'm always making chiffon bias tape, and it's life-changing because I can finish necklines and armholes in all my chiffon stuff, and life-changing. What is a piece of advice you would give to your younger self if you were studying sewing? Well, I'm not going to do it to my younger self because I actually started sewing at my younger self. I don't know what I would have done different if I'd started sewing at 5, you know, but I started sewing at 11, so that's pretty young. And one advice I'm going to give you is don't be afraid to make changes. It's all fine to sew patterns. It's perfectly fine to you know, follow the instructions and try to go but if there's things that you already have previous knowledge about, or techniques that you prefer, or things that you just feel are more enjoyable, just change it. Change the pattern, change the way, change the order. Don't feel like you need to follow that. Just be free, go with the flow. At this stage of my life, I really enjoy sewing. I love it because I don't have to follow instructions. The only time I actually follow instructions is when I'm doing a pattern test, and I do it because it's part of the test, but it is extremely difficult for me. Very difficult for me because I know I want to do it this way or that way, in what order, and like, you know. But it's my advice, as soon as you have a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of experience, don't be afraid to do things your way. Don't be afraid to explore different ways to do things, and ways that you're going to find more enjoyable to do your projects. So, you know, if a certain design has a side zipper and you don't like them, just put it somewhere else. You know, if there's a loose dress that you can slip over your head, why would you put a zipper in it? And just things like that. That is my advice. Just be practical, be free, and maybe sewing will be more enjoyable, and yeah, you'll feel like you had more to do with the project than just following from A to Z, you know? Flats or heels all the way. Even though I'm tall, I just love the look of heels. I will wear platforms, wedges, proper heels. Yeah, I'm on heels. I'm always wearing heels, always. Gym bunny or couch potato? I'm not a gym bunny. Like I'm not at the gym like every single day of the year, but I am there about 3 to 4 times a week. I'm not a couch potato. No, I used to be. Ask me before 2012 and I would have answered couch potato all the way. I actually, when I started becoming active, I did a like couch to 5K program on an app to get me into running, and it worked, and it wasn't painful. Like, it takes you through step by step, day by day. You go increasing in small increments, and I would recommend. There's so many apps, so many programs out there to get you from the couch to your first 5K, so highly recommend them. Even though I thought this was not going to be a long video, maybe it's a little bit longer than usual, but hey, I hope it was fun for you. Let me know what you think, what the truths and the lies are, and I will see you next time with an actual sewing video. Have fun sewing. Bye.